Hey everyone, this is Stren from ExtremeRigs.net, and today we're here to talk to you about the Monsoon free line of compression fittings as well as rotaries and accessories. Monsoon have been making components for a while now. They used to manufacture for other companies who would then rebrand them, and one of the companies they most closely aligned with was Danger Den, where they did a reservoir called the Monsoon reservoir. However, now they've fully branched out into their own business and are selling products under their own name. So the first product they launched was the series of compression fittings, which they launched earlier in 2012. And so these can be bought in two flavors. Either you get the modest 6-pack with 6 identical fittings in it, or you can buy them individually. Now they come with quite a range of sizes and colors. This particular one is the matte white, 3/8 inner diameter, 5/8 outer diameter. So there's 4 different sizes now. That may change in future. And there's 10 different colors. The white you see here, the matte black, which is hard for the camera to make out because of the light, as well as chrome, black chrome, which is kind of a darker chrome. So the chrome would be like this barb, for example, while the black chrome would be a darker chrome, more like this rotary right here. Neither of these are Monsoon fittings. And then with the colors, you have the gold / yellow. It looks a bit more gold to me than yellow. The blue, the red, the orange, and the purple and the green. All of those colors are not matte like this. Instead, they're more shiny, kind of like the temperature sensor we have here. So 4 different sizes, 10 different colors, a lot of options. But the thing that makes the compression fitting unique is mainly the window. You can see there's a little hole in the lock ring. So we have one here that's already taken apart. So a compression fitting is made up of 2 parts. The barb, which screws into the G1/4 female thread on the block. And this is what grips the tube. And then the lock ring, which attaches to the barb and secures the tube in place. So if we see an example of a tube that is plugged into a compression fitting, here's one right here. Here we go, camera's going to focus. And you can see through the window, you can see the tube. And this is nice because if your tube is starting to come loose, you will be able to see. You know, over time, tubing stretches, its properties change, and so sometimes what felt secure initially may not be secure later on. So just bear that in mind. So with the 6-pack, you also get the tool to secure the lock ring. So this is an example of what you get in the modest 6-pack. These are black fittings, so again, pretty hard to see. Taking 2 out already. So you get a little tool here, and then underneath the tool is a pack of O-rings. And the O-rings, you get 2 for each fitting. And you always get 1 black one, and then you get 1 that color matches. So for example, on the white, you can kind of see, come on, focus, camera. Well, you can't see because it's incredibly blurry. But there's a white O-ring in there. So the white one did come with a black one as well. So that's a nice touch. So you can use the tool in a number of ways. For a start, when you're locking the fitting in, you could use it like this to twist, because there are 2 notches on the fitting. Or if you're running out of space, you can use the end of it. And then you see the other side of the tool has 2 notches there. And so once you've got your, well, I got a piece of tube over here. So once you've got your tube and your lock ring, and you've that on there. And then you start tightening this up. Your finger tighten first. Obviously this isn't locked into anything, so, but then you can then put the tool in like so. Well, this is the wrong size tool because this is for the 3/4 size and this is a 5/8 size fitting. But basically it would lock on both sides and then you can use it to turn the fitting around. So those are the compression fittings. Very nice, a lot of options, and I haven't really seen any problems with these. It's nice that someone's come out and brought out a lot more colors and some unique features. Price-wise, they're priced very much in the mid-range of compression fittings. For example, they're about $6 to $7 if you buy the 6-pack. They're $6. If you buy them individually, they're $7. To compare that to other manufacturers, XSBC is generally one of the cheapest ones, and their compression fitting is about $4, while Bits Power, one of the most expensive ones, is more like about $8, $9. So kind of in the mid-range there. And for a quality product that brings some unique features, it's kind of nice. Do beware though, if you do really torque on this with the tool and then the tool slips, you can end up scratching some of the paint off. So it is tough paint. It's powder coated on there, but even so, if you're using the tool and it slips, it is a strong metal tool and it can scratch the paint off. So just a word of warning. The next part of well, before we move on, I just wanted to compare. So for some of you newer people to water cooling, you won't really know the difference between compressions and barbs. And certainly when I first started thinking about the first loop I wanted to build, I didn't really know the difference. So this, for example, is a barb. There is no lock ring that goes with this. So you just slide your tube over, and ideally you need some kind of clamp to hold the tube on. Some people like to use undersized tube so that it grips the barb more carefully. However, over time that tube will get looser, and so it's always a good idea to have some method of security to clamp the tube on. The most secure form is really the worm clamp, however they are also the ugliest. Coolant sells some little spring clamps that are quite nice, and they help, but certainly they're not going to be any more secure than a compression fitting. So a compression fitting basically takes the barb and then adds a lock ring with some kind of thread on the outside so that it just screws on and keeps the tube in place. So for example, on this tube, I can try and pull the tube out of the compression and it's not going to move. So, one of the main differences with compressions is that the barb ends up being a bit shorter because there is that lock ring clamp there. You usually don't need something as long. So you can see here we have a 3/8 barb, and in comparison to the compression fitting, you can see the compression fitting is a bit more stubby. And as you get to the larger size barbs, like the 1/2 inch, the difference gets even stronger. So that's a 1/2 inch barb, and if we compare that to a compression fitting, the 1/2 inch size, obviously you can get short stubby barbs, but generally they're not made that way because you want to be able to get a clamp on there too. So you can see it's a good deal more stubby, and that's not unique to Monsoon. If we take the coolants, coolant's compression fitting here, you can see again the barb is fairly small. So that's a quick overview of barbs versus compressions. The general rule is always use some kind of clamp or lock ring. So compressions are more expensive, but once you take into account the the clamp and lock ring, they do look better. So it's really a question of price versus aesthetics. Functionally, they do the same thing, and if you use a good clamp, you're not going to have problems. But if you rely on undersized tubing, even if it's worked for you for a long time, you know, one day you might find that you just get unlucky with it. So personally, I don't like to leave that to chance. So let's take a look at the Monsoon Rotary. The Rotary fitting was recently launched. Unfortunately, this is a black fitting, so it's going to be a little hard for you guys to see. But rather than make individual 90-degree rotaries for all the different colors and all the different options, Monsoon said, okay, we're going to create a system, and you kind of have to play within that system. So compared to the equivalent adapter plus fitting, it is cheaper than, say, Bits Power. However, for a 90-degree compression fitting, Bits Power would be a little cheaper because you're getting an all-in-one product. Here, you're getting basically a 90-degree adapter. In this case, it's really a T adapter. Plus, then you have to buy a separate compression fitting to go with it. So unlike the compression fittings, the Rotary only comes in two sizes: the 5/8 outer diameter that will perfectly match the 5/8 compression. So we put that on, you'll be able to see the outer diameters line up exactly. And then a slightly larger barrel for the 3/4 inch outer diameter compression fittings. So just bear that in mind. The threads, however, are of course standard G1/4, so any of the fittings can be put on here. For example, if we find that larger 5/8 guy, is that it? No, that's also a 3/8. We put him back in here. Alright, so we put this guy on there. You can see he is just a little bit bigger than the Rotary. So if you want that to be perfect, then you're going to have to match those two sizes. Just bear that in mind. So, so the Rotary action is really in the base here. You see it's fairly stiff. I would say it's not as stiff as, for example, a Bits Power Rotary. Normally they're pretty much the stiffest that I've used. However, they are not as loose as some of the other ones. I would like to see it just a little stiffer, but it's certainly not bad. The machining is really nice. It's fairly weighty, so you feel like you've got a solid piece. You don't feel like you're going to break it if you drop it. However, it's not too bulky. In certain small systems, maybe like a mini ITX or something, it might end up looking a bit bulky, particularly once you've added in all the options. So if you were to just buy this on its own, I believe it's about $10. So at the minimum, you will also need to add on to that a fitting. So for example, a $6 to $7 compression fitting to go on one side of it. And then on the other side, you're going to need at the minimum a cap, some kind of end cap or plug. Or you can add, if you want to do a T-split and split your loop into two sections or combine two sections into one, you could add another compression fitting on this side, or you could add one of the other accessories. For example, a temperature probe or a antimicrobial silver bullet or a light port, and we'll talk more about those later. So Rotary, you know, they're pretty simple. It does what it says on the tin. Machine nicely. It's a nice piece of kit, and it lets you do things that other Rotaries don't normally do. However, the price for that is a slight bit of added bulk. So just bear that in mind. So So the other accessories we were talking about, you know, because this is standard G and a quarter ports, all the other accessories are also standard G and a quarter. So the first of those is the silver bullet. This is one in the packaging. And what this is basically a machined lump of metal into a plug. This is one we unwrapped earlier. And then the metal gets silver plated with 99.9% silver. And then it gets covered with this little rubber cap here. And that's to help prevent the silver from tarnishing. So this can be put in a reservoir, but it can also fit rather nicely inside the rotary. So if we screw that in, see if you can just see it in there. And it's fairly tight. There's not a whole lot of clearance, but there's enough room there that it's not actually very restrictive. So that's a nice option for putting silver in your loop if you don't want to put a silver kill coil in your reservoir. And the silver kill coil really is the main competition for this. We have one here. Basically it's a shaving of 99.9% silver, and it's designed to sit in a reservoir. And sometimes that works just fine. However, there are some loops where you may not want to use a kill coil like this. For example, if you have a particularly large feed for a particularly large pump like an Iwaki, then you might be worried about getting that sucked in to the pump, and then it'll get chewed up and the pump may get damaged, etc., etc. So that's one reason why I like this, because I do run some powerful pump setups, and so it's nice to know that it's not going to go anywhere. You can see that there is a small amount of tarnish on here. I'm going to focus on that. No, we're not. Alright. Well, there is a little bit of tarnish on there. It's not too bad. I've never had a problem with even tarnished silver in a loop. It still seems to do the job for me. So that's the first accessory. The second accessory is the temperature probe. Essentially a similar thing. You get a little probe on the end of a plug and then some wires that go up, and you can plug into a normal temperature reader, like any other 2-wire temperature sensor basically. Most 2-wire setups are essentially thermistors that change their resistance value with temperature, so that's pretty standard. We don't have one of those, so I can't show you that. And then the other option is what's called a light port. And so this is a light port fitting. Basically what it is, it's a 2-part machined housing, and then inside there's an LED, and then that's protected by some glass that's sealed to the housing. The thing to bear in mind with these, in each package you get, let's see, we have an unopened one over here. This is what the package looks like. I've already opened a couple of these. So in the package you can see there's 2 different Molexes and 2 different colors of sleeve. Basically you get 2 different LEDs. And in my pack, the red LED the red sleeving corresponded to the narrow angle LED. And no, I'm sorry, the red is the wide angle, and then the black is the narrow angle. And generally for the narrow angle, you're going to be using that. Basically it means the light coming out is focused in a very narrow beam. And so that's much better for tubing, if you want to light up tubing from the inside. The wide angle means the light is going to be more spread out. So that's much better, for example, for a reservoir. If you're using a tube reservoir, you might want to play around with, which works better for you. Because depending on the width and the length and everything else, different ones may work better. For bay reservoirs, though, I definitely use the wide angle. The sleeving is it's a very nice quality sleeve. I actually thought it was MDPCX when I first looked at it, but I checked with Monsoon and they said it's not. It's independently sourced, and MDPC said they don't resell anyway. So then it gets, you can see there's some heat shrink here to protect against kinks and bends, and there's actually two pieces under there, a smaller one and then a larger one that goes over the top, just so that you can see as I pull it, it's actually holding it pretty safely in there, so that you know, the actual LED itself doesn't get hurt and the bend is manageable. So that's a nice feature. One thing I didn't like was the Molex. These are really bulky, and as you can see, it's not a pass-through. Sometimes on light fittings you'll get a pass-through connector where the wire comes out the side, and then basically you can stack these up, so you get a 12 volt in, or in this case a 5 volt in, and then on the back of the connector you can push another one in, so you can, you know, daisy chain basically up these connectors. Because this isn't, if you're using a lot of these, you're going to be quickly using up your string of Molex connectors on your power supply. So just bear in mind that, and also they are bulky, so it will take up a lot of space if you're using a lot of these. So if you are using a lot, you may end up re-sleeving or building custom connectors or some kind of fan-out system. So just bear that in mind. The fancy sleeving may end up going to waste. So if we try and take this apart, you'll see it's pretty easy, and it's fairly simple for changing the LED. So you just unscrew the housing, the top comes off, you can see the LED there, then we can push that down. And you'll see there's a little rubber grommet on here, and there's a hole cut in the side of that, a little slice cut out. So that just comes out. You see it's kind of like Pac-Man right there. And then the base can be pulled out. And so to put a different LED in, you just reverse the process. You push the LED through the back of the housing, put your rubber grommet on, push it to the end, and then put the top of the housing in. So that's how you change the LEDs without having to take apart the sleeving or remove the Molex or anything like that. So that's a nice touch. You can tell a lot of thought has gone into this product. It can then be, you know, attached to your rotary. You can plug in there, and here's another one I have that I did earlier. So then the light can be shot through a tube to give a kind of a pleasing effect, basically. Now, initially, when I was looking at these, I'd heard about the UV LEDs that are supposed to come out, and I assumed that all LEDs were UV, and they're not. The color of LED you get is the same as the color of the housing. In the case of non-colors like black or white, then you'll get blue, I believe. So this red housing means we get a red LED. And there's some caveats for use for this. I was a bit naive in expecting what this could do. I expected even in daylight that this LED would be bright enough to really show up a tube. And with clear tube and clear water, you will see the LED effect, but it will be a little, personally I would say, is a little on the weak side, so your tube ends up looking almost a little kind of pink. However, the effect does go a fair distance. I'd say it goes about 6 inches with clear tube and clear water. I also hoped that it would be able to light up clear tube with dye. I tried this with Mayhem's X1 dye in the blood red color, and the blood red is just a bit too dark at the normal concentration to be used with this light port fitting. Essentially in the day you couldn't see a difference at all, and even at night with all the lights turned off you could barely see the LED turning on. So if you do want to use dye, you're going to need to use a very light dye, like a very light blue or light orange or light red. It's probably going to look a little pink, but so you're kind of limited in your options there. What does work better is colored tubing. So for example, this is red Primo Chill LRT UV tube, and because this isn't clear tube, the light effect will be reduced somewhat. In daytime, the light is not going to go as far, so you're probably going to get about a good 4 inches or so, maybe 6 inches at the most, but you're going to start seeing it fade off. At night though, it does still look very good, and the advantage is over the clear tube that instead of the light going pink, it looks more red because of the tube. It'll just look a little darker. But do bear in mind, as you get plasticizer leach coming out of the tube and coating the inside of the tube with white stuff, that is going to block some of the light. So over time, unless you're regularly cleaning out your plasticizer, and let's see if we can show you, you can't really see it, but yeah, anyway, there is some white stuff on the inside of this tube. This was a used tube from earlier, and that will very much hurt the light. So just bear that in mind. I wouldn't recommend this for use with dyes. I would stick to clear tube and water, or colored tube. But again, try and get stuff that is known not to leach, and that's pretty hard these days because almost every tube out there seems to be upping the amount of plasticizer, and so you get that crappy white covering in no time. So bear that in mind. I do like the product, but again, this is very much focused towards those of you who either want a nice setup for photographs of the build, or for taking to LAN parties where it's dark, or if you're used to using your computer in the dark. That's where it looks best. In the daytime, it's a much more muted, well, at best I would say muted effect, and at worst probably not what you want. So bear in mind what it's designed for. Don't expect too much, but if you do fit in the right category, then I'd say it's a very good product for you. And it really is the only product out there designed to do this. I mean, obviously before you could kind of work out your own system using the BitsPower Q fitting, for example, and then a standard reservoir type LED. But those LEDs would generally not be at narrow enough angle to really have the right effect. So Monsoon put a lot of work into this to try and make it the best system possible, and I think they've done well. I do wish the LED was more powerful, and we'll have to see in future how the UV LED works out. So that's it for now. Do check out my website. There are night and daytime photos of the different setups I talked about with the light port, and that is www.extremerigs.net. And also feel free to follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/extremerigs. See you next time.